The ivory envelope rested on my kitchen counter like a silent threat, its gold lettering gleaming in the morning sunlight. I'd managed to ignore it for 3 days, but an insistent text from my cousin Grayson made avoiding it impossible today. My name is Morgan, and that envelope was a stark reminder of everything I'd spent the last 5 years trying to leave behind. I picked it up hesitantly, running my fingers along its crisp edges just as my phone vibrated again. Just rip it open already, Sophie called from the couch, where she'd been half-heartedly typing on her laptop for the past hour. Your phone won't shut up, and I can practically hear your stress levels rising. With a sigh, I tore the envelope open, pulling out a thick, expensive card, one that probably cost more than an average grocery bill. You are cordially invited, I read aloud, my voice dripping with sarcasm, to the grand celebration of Vivian Max's 55th birthday. Sophie shut her laptop and leaned in. Your mother never does anything small, huh? Wait, there's a handwritten note. I fished out a smaller card and immediately recognized the precise, elegant script. Your presence is required. Come learn your fate. Well, that's not unsettling at all. My phone buzzed again. This time I answered. Grayson, I was just about to call you. Did you open it? His voice was tight with urgency. Morgan, you have to be there. Trust me. I put him on speaker so Sophie could hear. Why? So she can parade me around and remind everyone that her daughter is a massive disappointment. Last time I went to one of these, she spent half an hour telling her friends how I was wasting my potential on finger paintings. This time is different, Grayson said. Leighton called me yesterday. Something big is about to happen. Sophie's eyebrows shot up. The family lawyer? Now that's interesting. I turned toward my studio window, staring out at the cityscape. My latest painting sat unfinished on its easel, a direct contrast to the pristine, curated world my mother thrived in. What did Leighton say? I asked. He wouldn't go into details, but he mentioned your grandmother's letter, the one she left you before she passed. A chill ran down my spine. I crossed the room, pulled open a drawer, and retrieved the well-worn envelope containing my grandmother's final words. I'd read them so many times the creases were beginning to tear. Sophie's voice softened. What letter? I hesitated, then unfolded the paper. My grandmother left this for me 6 months ago. It said that when the time was right, I'd need to be brave. That she had left me something important, but I had to wait for the right moment. Sophie crossed her arms. And you never thought to mention this because it felt personal. Sacred. My fingers traced my grandmother's signature. She was the only one who ever truly believed in me, who supported my art, my choices. She was everything my mother isn't. Grayson's voice cut in. The gala is in 3 days. Mother's pulling out all the stops. She booked the Grand Plaza's ballroom, invited the entire city's elite. Whatever she's planning, it's going to be significant. Sophie grabbed her laptop and started typing rapidly. Just hacked into the event planner's guest list. Over 300 confirmed attendees, including every major business contact your family has. Great, I muttered. An audience for my inevitable public humiliation. Or, Sophie countered, her eyes glinting mischievously. A chance to finally take control. Your grandmother left you that letter for a reason. Maybe this is the moment she meant. I read the invitation again, my mother's chilling words standing out. Come learn your fate. Was this her final move after years of trying to mold me into someone I wasn't? I'll be there, I told Grayson. But on my terms. After hanging up, I walked back to my painting, a portrait of my grandmother, her wise eyes seeming to watch me knowingly. Around her neck was the locket she never removed, the one she'd left me in her will, along with her letter. Sophie stepped beside me. What's on your mind? I reached for the locket hanging at my throat, feeling its familiar weight. It's time to open this. Grandma said I'd find my answers here. Sophie grinned. Then let's see what secrets she left you. The clasp was stiff, like it hadn't been opened in years. With a small click, the locket popped open. A tiny folded paper fluttered into my palm. And in that instant, I knew my life was about to change forever. At the Grand Plaza, the ballroom gleamed like a crystalline cavern, though no amount of glitter could mask the tension in the air. I smoothed the fabric of my emerald green dress, pointedly not the soft pink my mother had sent over, and felt Sophie give my arm a reassuring squeeze. Ready? She whispered. As I'll ever be. I clutched the locket at my throat, my other hand gripping the document tucked inside my clutch. The paper from the locket had changed everything, but timing was key. Grayson appeared, looking sharp in his tux. Heads up. Mother's headed this way. Vivian Max approached, radiant in white silk and diamonds, her practiced smile flawless. But her sharp eyes turned cold the moment they landed on me. Darling, you made it, though I see you ignored my suggestion about the dress. Mother. I kissed her cheek lightly, feeling the tension in her posture. Happy birthday. Yes, well. Her gaze flicked to Sophie with thinly veiled disdain. I don't recall the invitation including a +1. Sophie's my date, I said smoothly. You did say to bring someone special. Before my mother could retort, Leighton appeared, offering her a flute of champagne. Vivian, the governor just arrived. They need you by the stage. She plastered on her polished smile. We'll talk later, Morgan. Try not to embarrass me tonight. As she disappeared into the crowd, Leighton handed me a glass as well. Drink this. You'll need it. He glanced at my clutch. Everything in place. I nodded. Sophie has it covered. Has what covered? I tensed at the familiar voice. Turning, I found Riker, my ex, watching me with a smug expression. Morgan, you look different. Riker, I forced myself to stay composed. Didn't expect to see you here. Your mother invited me, he said smoothly. She believes in keeping close ties with family friends. Sophie stepped in. Family friends who conveniently dumped her daughter after a private meeting with said mother? Ancient history. Riker smirked. Though I can't help but notice you two look prepared. Grayson stepped forward. Riker, I think the senator's daughter was asking about you. She's by the fountain. Riker's gaze lingered before he sauntered off. I exhaled and took a sip of champagne. He knows something's up, Sophie murmured. He suspects, Leighton corrected. But he doesn't know. Nobody does, except the four of us. He checked his watch. 20 minutes until your mother's speech. Are you sure about this? The weight of the document in my clutch was grounding. It contained proof of my mother's lies, her betrayals, the truth she'd worked so hard to bury. I've never been more sure. A familiar saccharine voice interrupted. Morgan, darling. My Aunt Patricia air-kissed my cheeks. We've missed you at the country club. Your mother says you're still doing that art thing. I smiled sweetly. Why, yes. And tonight, I'm unveiling my most important piece yet. I just sold 3 pieces to the Modern Art Museum. Her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. Oh, how creative of you. As the evening wore on, the routine continued, relatives and acquaintances circling in, exchanging pleasantries laced with thinly veiled judgment. The air was thick with artificial smiles and carefully worded jabs. From across the room, I watched my mother move with practiced precision, every interaction a performance, every word calculated. Sophie's phone vibrated. She glanced at it, then leaned in close. Everything's uploaded and set. One message from me, and it all goes public. Grayson touched my arm. This is your last chance to change your mind. I scanned the opulent ballroom, the polished marble, the glittering chandeliers, the perfectly curated illusion of success. My grandmother's words echoed in my mind. The truth will set us all free, even those who fear it most. A voice rang out over the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your hostess, Vivian Mack. My mother took center stage, radiant beneath the lights. The crowd applauded, their admiration feeding her confidence. Nearby, I saw Leighton quietly taking position near the exit, his phone ready. Thank you all for being here tonight, she began, her tone warm and practiced. Family has always been my greatest priority, which is why I have a very special announcement to share. I clutched the locket at my throat, drawing strength from the memory of my grandmother, her wisdom, her belief in me. Morgan, sweetheart, my mother's voice took on a syrupy sweetness. Come up here and join me. Sophie squeezed my hand. This is it. I stepped forward, crossing the room as a hush fell over the crowd. But before I even reached the stage, the first chime of a phone notification cut through the silence. Then another, and another. I saw my mother glance toward her phone resting on the podium. A flicker of confusion crossed her face. Then she picked it up, and her expression changed to horror. The truth was already in motion, unfolding screen by screen, impossible to contain. I took my place beside her, my shoulders squared, my pulse steady. The spotlight was blinding, but I didn't blink. My mother gripped the microphone a little tighter. I have an announcement regarding the future of our family's legacy, she continued, her voice forced but steady. But the audience was no longer focused on her. Murmurs rippled through the room. I caught glimpses of screens displaying headlines, documents, proof. Someone gasped, "Is this real?" The governor's expression darkened. Riker, standing near the back, stared at his phone, his face pale. Aunt Patricia was whispering furiously to her husband. My mother cleared her throat sharply. If I could have everyone's attention. But the tide had already turned. "Mother," I said, my voice carrying through the microphone, "maybe you should check your phone again. It seems there's some breaking news." She shot me a murderous look before glancing at the screen in her hand. And this time, the color drained completely from her face. "This is ridiculous," she spat. "Some kind of digital attack, obviously a fabrication." I held up a crisp, aged document from my clutch. "No, Mother, it's not a hack. I have the original right here, Grandma's signature, your signature. The truth in black and white." The ballroom erupted. "You mean she forged it? What about the offshore accounts?" "She's been stealing from the foundation." My mother whirled on me, her composure cracking. "What have you done?" she hissed under her breath. I didn't flinch. "I'm just following Grandma's instructions." She lunged for the document, but I stepped back. "Careful, Mother. Everyone's watching." Leighton took a step forward. His calm, steady presence commanded attention. "As legal counsel, I can confirm the legitimacy of these documents. Elizabeth left clear instructions for their release upon the right conditions." "You knew?" My mother turned on him, her voice raw. "You helped her with this betrayal?" "She knew the truth," Leighton replied simply. "And now so does everyone else." My mother gripped the microphone again, her voice shaking. "Fine. If that's how you want to play this, Morgan, then listen carefully. As of this moment, you are cut off. No inheritance. No trust fund. Nothing." I let out a small laugh. "You really think this was about money?" Sophie stepped forward, holding up her phone. "It's too late. The news is everywhere. Journalists, authorities, social media. No more secrets." My mother lunged for her, but Grayson intercepted smoothly. "Enough, Aunt Vivian. It's over." Around us, the ballroom was descending into chaos. Business partners were making calls. High society guests were inching toward the exits. Reporters had begun gathering just beyond the doors, alerted by Sophie's perfectly timed leak. "Morgan," my mother's voice turned desperate. "We can fix this. Whatever you want, your own gallery, a foundation, we can rebuild." I touched the locket at my neck, the final gift from the only person who had ever truly believed in me. "You still don't get it, do you?" I said softly. "This isn't about what I want. This is about the truth, and truth doesn't need negotiation." From the corner of my eye, I saw Riker step forward, his expression dark. "You told me Morgan was the one stealing from the company. That's why you made me leave her, wasn't it?" My mother didn't answer. I turned to him. "She lied to you, like she's lied to everyone else." Security personnel appeared at the entrance, moving purposefully toward the stage. Leighton nodded at them. "The premises need to be secured. We'll be collecting any remaining evidence." My mother's mask of fury returned. "You'll regret this," she spat. "All of you." But her words no longer held power. I turned away, stepping off the stage as security moved in. I didn't look back. Grayson appeared at my side. "The press is waiting for a statement." I exhaled slowly. The truth isn't always pretty, but it's always powerful. As I stepped toward the doors, flashes from cameras illuminated the space. Sophie was on one side of me, Grayson on the other, as reporters shouted questions. "Miss Mack, can you confirm the charges against your mother? What led you to expose her now? Do the fraud accusations extend internationally?" Before I could speak, Leighton appeared, flanked by two serious-looking individuals in dark suits. "Miss Morgan," he said, "Agents Carter and Rodriguez from the Financial Crimes Unit need to speak with you immediately." With one last glance back at the ballroom, the collapsing empire of lies, I nodded. "Let's get started." Through the glass walls, I watched as security escorted my mother away. Her perfect facade had shattered, tears streaked her makeup, and fury twisted her features. "Miss Morgan," Agent Carter said, breaking the silence, "we've been investigating your mother's financial dealings for months, but we lack the hard evidence to make a case." What you've provided changes everything. There's more, Grayson interjected, unlocking his phone. Morgan, show them what you found. I hesitated. Are you sure? This wasn't part of Grandma's original plan. That's because she didn't know about it, he replied. But you need to see this. Taking a steadying breath, I pulled up the encrypted files Sophie had helped me access. These transactions link my mother to multiple shell companies. But look at the dates, they begin just weeks after my father died. Agent Rodriguez leaned forward. Are you implying your mother had a role in? Before he could finish, the door burst open. Morgan. Ricker stormed in, ignoring the agent's protests. We need to talk. Now. This is a federal investigation. Agent Carter started, but I raised a hand to stop him. Give me 5 minutes. He might know something important. Outside in the hallway, Riker paced, jaw tight. Your mother didn't just pay me to break up with you. She offered me a position in one of those shell companies, said it was for a discreet, high-priority project. Sophie folded her arms. And you're just telling us this now. I turned it down, he said quickly. Something felt off. But afterward, I did some digging, and Morgan. Those companies are connected to the accident that killed your father. The ground felt unsteady beneath me. What are you saying? Your father was looking into financial discrepancies before he died, Grayson said quietly. I found his old notes in your grandmother's study last week. I was waiting for the right time to tell you. A commotion broke out in the lobby. I turned just in time to see my mother break free from security, running toward us. Morgan, you don't know what you're doing. Your father. 2 agents intercepted her, but before they could drag her away, she flung a USB drive at my feet. The truth, she screamed. It's all there. He gave me no choice. Sophie snatched up the drive before anyone else could react. Give me 2 minutes, she murmured, already pulling out her laptop. We crowded around as lines of text flooded her screen. Oh my God, she whispered. Morgan, these are emails between your mother and someone called the facilitator. They discuss removing an obstacle your father. Everything inside me froze. She had him killed. I breathed, because he was going to expose her. Agents, Leighton called from the doorway. You need to see this. As the agents rushed over, my phone vibrated with a new email. The sender was unrecognizable, but the subject made my blood run cold. Your grandmother knew. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a video, grainy but clear. My grandmother's voice crackled through the speaker. My dearest Morgan, if you're watching this, then the truth has come to light. But there's one last piece you must find. Your father left something for you, something your mother never discovered. Go to the old lake house. In the boathouse, behind the 3rd panel on the east wall. What you find there will complete the puzzle. Sophie's head snapped up. The lake house? That's where. Where my father spent his last weekend alive, I finished. We need to go. Now. Grayson was already holding up his car keys. I'll drive. Wait, Riker called. I'm coming too. I owe you that much. Sophie packed up her laptop. We better hurry. Once your mother's lawyers catch wind of this, they'll have the place locked down. I nodded at the agents who were deep in discussion with Leighton. This was no longer about financial fraud. This was about justice. As we sprinted toward the parking garage, my phone buzzed again. Another anonymous email. Just 4 words. Be careful. Trust no one. The lake house loomed before us, an eerie silhouette against the stormy sky. Rain drummed against the windshield as Grayson killed the engine. Silence settled over us, broken only by the distant rumble of thunder. Security system disabled, Sophie reported, closing her laptop. We have 20 minutes before it resets. We should have told the agents, Riker muttered, but he still followed as we ran toward the boathouse. The old structure groaned in the wind, carrying the scent of damp wood and forgotten summers. I swept my phone's flashlight across the room, illuminating cobwebs and dust-covered fishing gear. East wall, 3rd panel, Grayson reminded me, running his hands along the wooden siding. Here, I said, fingers brushing a loose board. Together, we pried it free, revealing a small compartment. Inside, a waterproof document case sat untouched. Morgan, Sophie hissed. There's a car coming up the driveway. Get that case open, Ricker urged, peering through a cracked window. My hands shook as I entered the combination, my birth date. The lock clicked open, revealing a USB drive, stacks of documents, and a letter addressed to me in my father's handwriting. Headlights slashed through the boathouse walls. "We need to move," Grayson whispered. "Back door," I said. Through the trees, to the guest cottage. We slipped out just as voices neared the boathouse. I glimpsed figures in dark suits, not police, not federal agents. The cottage was small but sturdy. Sophie immediately connected the USB drive to her laptop while I spread the documents across an old coffee table. "Your father was meticulous," Riker murmured, flipping through bank statements, offshore accounts, and handwritten notes. "Guys," Sophie's voice was tight. "These files, they go beyond your mother's fraud. This is a massive conspiracy. Politicians, judges, corporate elites. Your father uncovered all of it." Thunder rumbled as I unfolded my father's letter. "My dearest Morgan," I read. "If you're reading this, I failed to stop them. But you can. Your mother isn't acting alone. The people she works for, they control more than you realize. And they won't stop." A sharp crack split the air. The cottage window exploded inward. "Sniper," Grayson shouted. "Get down." Sophie frantically typed, "Uploading everything. Done." Another shot rang out. Riker grabbed the document case. "We need to go." "The tunnel?" I gasped, remembering childhood summers. "There's a storm drain beneath the cottage. It leads to the lake." "Morgan." A voice called from outside. "Come out. We just want to talk." I froze. "That's impossible," I whispered. "That voice, it's Uncle James." Grayson's expression darkened. "Morgan, your uncle died 3 years ago." "Apparently not." "Morgan, where's the tunnel?" Sophie urged. I led them to the bathroom, yanking up loose floorboards to reveal the hidden passage below. As we dropped down one by one, the cottage door splintered. "They're in the tunnel," someone shouted. "Call the others." We ran through the darkness, our flashlights bouncing against damp concrete walls. Footsteps pounded behind us. "There," Sophie pointed. "A maintenance ladder. That has to lead out." We climbed, lungs burning, as voices closed in behind us. This wasn't just about the truth anymore. This was survival. I climbed first, shoving against the heavy cover. Rain streamed down as we emerged one by one behind a small lakeside convenience store. "My car's 2 blocks that way," Sophie panted. "If we move fast, we can make it." "Morgan." Grayson's voice cut through the night, stopping me in my tracks. His eyes were locked on his phone screen. "You need to see this." A news alert flashed across the screen, showing my mother stepping out of custody, a composed smile on her face as cameras flashed. Behind her, her lawyers spoke about false accusations and family misunderstandings. "How?" I whispered. They had undeniable proof. Grayson zoomed in on the image, pointing to a man standing in the background. Uncle James, alive and well, wearing an FBI badge. "This goes deeper than we thought," Sophie murmured, clutching her laptop. "Way deeper." My phone vibrated. Another anonymous email. "Safe house ready. Coordinates attached. Move fast." A sick realization settled in. We couldn't trust anyone, not even the people meant to uphold the law. My grandmother had warned me. This wasn't just about my mother anymore. This was. Tires screeched at the end of the street. Black SUVs appeared from both directions. "Run." Grayson grabbed my wrist. "Split up. Meet at the coordinates. Go." We scattered into the storm, my father's letter pressed against my chest. Whatever this conspiracy was, whoever was behind it, it had already cost my father his life, and now it might take ours too. The safe house turned out to be an abandoned art gallery in the industrial district. I slipped in through the back, my pulse hammering as I checked every shadow. Sophie was already inside, her laptop screen casting eerie blue light over her face. "Grayson's 2 minutes away," she whispered. No sign of Riker. "What have you found?" The files were encrypted, but I cracked the first layer. She turned the laptop toward me. "Your father was building a case against something called Project Legacy. Look at these names. Judges, senators, CEOs. A floorboard creaked. We both froze. Then, a soft whistle. Grayson's signal. He slipped inside, slightly out of breath. "You're bleeding," I noticed, eyeing the tear in his sleeve. "Scraped a fence getting away," he muttered. Then he pulled out his phone. "But I found something." He pressed play. A muffled voice spoke first. The girl has the files. Another voice answered. No, she has no idea what she's up against. Then a third. Project Legacy must be protected at all costs. Yes, even if it means. The recording cut off. Before we could react, the gallery's security lights flared to life. Footsteps, multiple sets. Up there, Sophie pointed to a narrow catwalk above the exhibition space. We scrambled up a maintenance ladder just as the front doors burst open. My mother stepped inside, flanked by Uncle James and two men in tactical gear. Her expression was unreadable, calm, controlled. A far cry from the mother I'd once known. Morgan, she called, her voice cutting through the tension. Stop this nonsense. You don't know what you're interfering with. She's right. The voice behind us made my blood run cold. Ricker. He emerged from the shadows of the catwalk, gun in hand. Sorry, Morgan, he said. But this is bigger than you. Realization hit like a punch to the gut. You were working for them the whole time. The breakup, the lake house. You were keeping tabs on me. Project Legacy protects the order of things, he said. Your father never understood that. Neither do you. Tell her the truth, Vivian, a new voice interrupted. Leighton. But not the calm, collected lawyer I'd known. This Leighton moved like a soldier, like someone used to giving orders. My mother's expression tightened. She's not ready. I'm standing right here, I snapped. Stop talking about me like I'm a child. What is Project Legacy? Leighton didn't hesitate. Power. Not just influence, true power. Your grandmother didn't just build an empire, Morgan. She built a network that controls everything. Judicial appointments, global policies, wars. Your father figured it out, and he thought he could take it down. My throat tightened, and you killed him for it. We gave him a choice, my mother said. He made the wrong one. Sophie's fingers flew over her keyboard. Almost there, she whispered. Keep them talking. Why tell me all this now? I demanded. Because you were always meant to take your place, Uncle James said. Your grandmother knew it. She left you those clues to test you. She wanted me to expose you. I shot back. My mother laughed. Expose us? She built this. Everything I know, I learned from her. Sophie's screen flickered. Got it, she breathed. Files decrypted and uploaded, hitting every major news network in 3, 2. Phones buzzed throughout the room. Leighton checked his and swore. She broadcast everything. Kill them, Uncle James ordered. Now. Gunfire erupted. Grayson tackled me behind a sculpture as bullets ricocheted off steel. Sophie sprinted for the fire escape, clutching her laptop. This way, Ricker shouted. Then the world exploded. Smoke, debris, a deafening blast. Through the chaos, dark figures descended through the shattered skylight. Tactical teams, FBI jackets, real federal agents. Drop your weapons. The gallery flooded with officers. Uncle James went down fighting. My mother, her face unreadable, let them cuff her without a word. As she was led past me, she held my gaze. You really are my daughter, she murmured. I exhaled, gripping the final envelope in my hands. More than you know. Hours later, in a sterile FBI safe house, I sat in silence. Sophie perched beside me, Grayson pacing like a caged animal. Agent Torres stood in the doorway. Well? Sophie nudged. Open it. With shaking hands, I broke the seal. A single photograph slid out. My grandmother, standing in front of the lake house. But she wasn't alone. Beside her stood a much younger Agent Torres. Torres exhaled. It's time you knew the full truth. I looked up. You knew my grandmother. Torres nodded. She wasn't part of Project Legacy, Morgan. She was part of the task force trying to take it down. My breath caught. What? She went undercover for 20 years to infiltrate their ranks, Torres said. Everything she did. Building that empire, leaving you clues. It was all part of the mission. Grayson stilled. That's why she kept those records. Sophie's eyes widened. And why she left them for Morgan. She knew they'd try to recruit her next. Torres nodded. She trusted you to finish what she started. My fingers trembled as I turned over the photograph. A handwritten note. My dearest Morgan, I'm sorry for the weight I've placed on you, but I always knew you have your father's courage. You are my legacy. Now, one final task remains. A sharp knock on the door. Ma'am, an agent stepped in. We have movement on all Project Legacy assets. Taurus turned to me. They're activating their contingency plan. I inhaled sharply. We froze their known accounts. The agent continued, but. There's more, I interrupted, remembering my father's files. Hidden assets, emergency protocols. My father found them all. Taurus met my gaze. We need access, Morgan. Lives are at stake. I glanced at Sophie, who gave a firm nod before pulling out her laptop. The encryption key, it's in your locket, isn't it? My fingers brushed over the old locket hanging around my neck. Inside, tucked behind my grandmother's photo, was a tiny microchip I'd never noticed before. Sophie connected it to her laptop. 15 minutes. That's all I need. The lights flickered. Then came the wail of emergency alarms. Taurus tense, reaching for her weapon. They're here. Morgan, you and your friends need tow. The door slammed open. Rieker stumbled in, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead. Behind him, his FBI escort lay unconscious. Morgan, run, he gasped. They're here to silence everyone. Taurus stepped forward, but gunfire cut her off. Glass shattered as figures in black tactical gear crashed through the windows, dropping into the room. The files. Sophie shielded her laptop. I just need a few more minutes. Grayson grabbed a fallen agent's gun, firing back as we bolted toward the emergency exit. Rieker joined us, proving his defection was real as he took down 2 attackers. This way. Torres led us through twisting hallways. There's a safe room in the basement. Another explosion rocked the building. Over the loudspeakers, my mother's voice rang out. Morgan, stop this. Some truths should stay buried. We burst into the basement. Sophie's laptop dinged. Upload complete, she breathed. Every hidden asset, every name, every account, exposed. Get down. Rieker shoved me aside as a bullet tore through the air. At the end of the hall, Uncle James stood, eyes burning with rage. The legacy dies with you, he snarled, lifting his gun. 3 shots rang out. Uncle James crumpled. Behind him stood my mother, her hand still cuffed, a smoking gun in her grip. Mom, my voice was barely a whisper. I won't let them take you, she said simply. Not like they took your father. Torres trained her weapon on her. Drop it. A sad smile touched my mother's lips as she let the gun clatter to the floor. It doesn't matter now. Project Legacy is over. Your grandmother won, Morgan. Just as she intended. Phones vibrated throughout the corridor. News alerts. Sophie turned her screen toward me. Headlines flashing reports of arrests, exposed corruption, and the downfall of the network that had ruled from the shadows for decades. Elizabeth had outplayed them all. My mother looked at me one last time before agents led her away. You're stronger than I ever was, she murmured. I touched the locket. Inside, tiny words were engraved beneath the microchip. Truth is the greatest legacy. Torres approached, handing me a sealed document. Your grandmother left this for you. I unfolded it slowly. It wasn't just a letter. It was the deed to the family estate, to the business holdings she had shielded from Project Legacy's corruption. I looked at Sophie and Grayson, at Rieker, who had chosen redemption. Then I looked at my mother, being taken away, her empire in ruins. Sophie's voice was soft. What now? I exhaled. I built something new. The last sign bearing Mac Enterprises was taken down as workers hoisted a new one in its place. Legacy Arts Foundation. Sophie admired the transformation, turning corporate headquarters into an arts center. That's poetic justice. The board signed off on the final restructuring this morning, Grayson added, handing me coffee. All legitimate assets will fund arts education for underprivileged kids. My phone buzzed. A message from Torres. Sentencing is today. Thought you'd want to know. I showed Sophie and Grayson. I should be there. Sophie linked her arm with mine. We're coming with you. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the steps. At the podium, Rieker was speaking. That's why I'm testifying. The truth matters more than power. Inside, the courtroom was packed. At the defense table, my mother sat as composed as ever. When our eyes met, something flickered across her face. Pride, regret, maybe both. All rise. The judge read out the charges. Fraud, conspiracy, Obstruction of justice. Then she turned to my mother. You may make a final statement. Slowly, my mother stood, but she didn't address the judge. She turned to me. Morgan, I spent my life chasing power, trying to control everything. I lost sight of what truly mattered, the kind of legacy your grandmother wanted to leave behind. She took a steadying breath. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know, this is the truth. The judge sentenced her to 20 years. As they led her away, she stopped beside me. Your father would be proud of what you're building, she said. And so would Elizabeth. Back at the gallery, the space that once displayed corporate trophies was now filled with art from young, unknown artists. I turned at the sound of my name. Rachel, Leighton's daughter, ran up and hugged me. The first group of scholarship students is here. 30 teenagers stepped inside, eyes wide as they took in the gallery. One girl stopped in front of a portrait I had painted of my grandmother. Did you make this? She asked. I nodded. It's my grandmother. She taught me that real power comes from truth and creativity, not control. Is that why you started this? Another student asked. I smiled. After everything that happened, I realized something. When I felt trapped by other people's expectations, art helped me find myself. Now, I want to give that same freedom to others. Sophie passed out sketchbooks. Okay, everyone, find a spot that inspires you. Grayson nudged me. Look who's here. Taurus stood at the entrance, holding a small package. We found this in evidence lockup, she said. I think it belongs here. I unwrapped it carefully. It was my father's sketchbook. His notes, his drawings, his dreams. Taurus glanced around. You've built something remarkable, Morgan. The setting sun streamed through the skylights, casting golden light across the gallery. Students sat cross-legged, sketching, dreaming. Sophie taught a girl how to mix colors. Grayson hung a sign announcing free art classes. I opened my locket and replaced my grandmother's photo with a tiny sketch. 3 generations of women, drawn by my father. Beneath it, I added my own inscription. Truth, art, freedom. Miss Morgan. A young girl approached, holding up her drawing. I made something. Will you look? She had drawn a figure breaking free from chains, surrounded by light and color. I saw my own journey in her lines. I knelt beside her, meeting her eyes. It's perfect, I said. Keep creating, keep telling your truth. Laughter and conversation filled the gallery, a place reborn with purpose. This was my true inheritance, not money, not power. The chance to help others find their voice. In the end, that was the greatest legacy of all. Thanks for watching. See you again in the next video. Stay stunned.